I want you to imagine walking into your absolute favorite art museum. Picture the echoing halls, the specific architecture, and, that serious hush that hangs in the air around classical masterpieces.
Oh, yeah, they're very distinct, almost reverent atmosphere.
Exactly. Now imagine someone rolling a massive multi-genre jukebox right into the center of the gallery, wiring it directly into the paintings, and, well, forcing the canvas to sing.
Which is such a wild visual. You're suddenly taking a medium defined by static space and forcing it into a temporal flow.
Right. Suddenly the entire history of visual art is projecting outward as heavy rock, smooth R&B, and thumping club music. Okay, let's unpack this because that specific collision is our mission for today's deep dive.
It's a really fascinating data set to dig into.
It really is. We are diving into a dataset known as the Master of Vision Project. What we have in front of us is a sprawling spreadsheet, literally hundreds of rows deep, cataloging AI-generated audio tracks.
And for context, these were all created using the Suno AI platform, mostly concentrated over a really tight window in late 2025.
Yeah, and the premise is just so highly systematic. The creator took the names of legendary artists and their specific world-famous artworks. We're talking everything from Da Vinci's Mona Lisa to Van Gogh's Starry Night and used them as text prompts.
Right, they fed them directly into the audio generation model. But, the sheer scale of the spreadsheet isn't even the most compelling part. It's the methodology.
Oh, absolutely. Because this wasn't just casual experimentation, right? When you look at the grid, it operates almost like a clinical trial.
Yeah, highly controlled environment.
For almost every single artist and artwork listed, like Johannes Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring or Hieronymus Bosch's The Garden of Earthly Delights, Botticelli's Spring, they ran them through the exact same 6 musical filters.
The control variables are striking. I mean, they didn't just ask the AI to make, quote-unquote, a song inspired by the painting. They forced every prompt through rock, R&B, pop, jazz, electro dance music, and ballad.
It's basically a bizarre audio taste test. It's like taking a single ingredient, say the Mona Lisa, and forcing a machine to cook it as a soup for jazz, a heavy steak for rock, an energy drink for EDM, and, I don't know, a dessert for pop.
Yeah, just to see what the machine spits out. And they added this whole other layer of redundancy, too.
Right, the multiple takes.
Exactly. For almost every genre, there are 2 distinct versions generated. You have version 1 and version 2 for the EDM track of Vermeer's Pearl, version 1 and version 2 for the jazz track of Bosch's Garden.
It reminds me of a really rigorous translation exercise, like giving a translator a tragic poem and demanding they rebuild it using only modern club slang and then making them do it a second time to see if the structure changes.
That analogy actually captures the underlying mechanics perfectly. What's fascinating here is the timestamp data attached to these files.
Oh, the timestamps are crazy.
Yeah, they completely strip away the romantic notion of, like, an artist waiting for inspiration to strike.
Looking closely at them, especially between November 18th and November 22nd of 2025, the pace is just relentless. It's dozens of tracks generated back to back.
It's an automated factory line.
Literally. On November 21st, the EDM version of Vermeer's Pearl is logged at 11:43 a.m. Then the jazz versions hit at 11:44 a.m., the pop versions by 11:46.
Which tells us this is a deliberate stress test of the neural network. By holding the semantic prompt, the artist and the painting title completely constant, they're isolating the genre variable.
To testing the machine's limits.
Right. They are probing the system's architecture to see how it navigates the mathematical tension between a fixed visual concept and, well, a shifting audio framework.
And that tension is where the data starts to get truly hilarious and also jarring. Because when you apply an unyielding formula to fine art, the cognitive dissonance is massive.
Oh, for sure.
Let's talk about Gustave Courbet's masterpiece, A Burial at Ornans.
Which is a seminal work of realism. I mean, it's a very somber, historically weighty depiction of a rural funeral. It's full of dark tones and grieving figures. Yeah.
Right, it's literally a funeral. But because the project strictly adheres to the 6-genre requirement, this spreadsheet includes A Burial at Ornans, rendered as a bouncy pop track, and a high-energy EDM track.
It creates such a fascinating philosophical friction.
It really does. It is a very specific type of absurdity to imagine a club DJ dropping the bass for an 1849 French funeral painting.
It's wild to listen to.
But wait, I want to push back on the AI's actual process here. When the model is fed the Scream by Edvard Munch, the ultimate visual representation of human anxiety, and it has to make it an R&B track.
Yeah.
Is the machine actually grappling with the concept of existential dread? Or is it just completely ignoring the word scream because the mathematical rules of R&B overrule it?
That is the core question. You're touching on the fundamental mechanism of how these models parse language. We had to look at token weighting and something called latent
That's
space.
latent space, right?
Yeah. Imagine a vast, multi-dimensional map where every concept the AI has ever learned is a coordinate. So the concept of a funeral, or melancholy, lives in a neighborhood surrounded by slow tempos, minor keys, acoustic instruments.
And the EDM or pop parameter lives on the complete opposite side of town.
Precisely. The EDM coordinate is surrounded by fast tempos, synthesized bass lines, four-on-the-floor kick drums. When the AI gets the prompt a burial at Ornan's EDM, it has to resolve two incredibly distant coordinates.
So it's basically trying to bridge a massive gap.
Exactly. It doesn't understand the cultural reverence of a funeral. It just sees a word that usually demands a slow tempo, violently colliding with the genre rule that mandates 120 beats per minute.
So which rule wins the tug-of-war?
In that late 2025 architecture, the structural parameters almost always win out. The genre tag acts as the dominant anchor for the waveform generation.
So the vibe of the painting doesn't stand a chance.
Well, the model might attempt a compromise. Like, it might use darker synth tones or a minor key progression because the word burial exerted some gravitational pull. But the structural mandate of EDM will force it to be a dance track.
Wow.
That bizarre cognitive dissonance you hear is literally the sound of an algorithm trying to bridge two mathematically incompatible regions of its brain.
It's the machine desperately trying to obey two conflicting masters. But if that genre parameter is so dominant that it overrides the emotion of the painting, it makes me wonder if it overrides the structure of the painting, too.
What do you mean by structure in this context?
Well, let's look at the vocal configurations in the data set, because here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yes. The vocal assignments are a huge giveaway for the model's training bias.
Right. Looking through the core of this file, there is a massive, unrelenting pattern. Overwhelmingly, these tracks are explicitly generated as a duet.
Almost across the board.
Exactly. Jan van Eyck's portrait is a duet. Rembrandt's Night Watch is a duet. Gustav Klimt's The Kiss is a duet. Now, later on, maybe as the creator tweak things, you see occasional tags for a solo female or male voice, like on Mucha's Sarah.
But the absolute baseline for hundreds of tracks is the duet format.
Yeah. So why a duet? If you are generating a song about a solo portrait, why program two voices? Is it a conversation between the artist and the canvas?
This raises an important question, right? When you force a static image into a time-based medium with vocals, you are inherently establishing a perspective.
Because a solo voice acts like a monologue. It's an observer in a gallery describing the painting or maybe the internal thoughts of the subject themselves.
Exactly. But a duet fundamentally changes the architecture of the story. It inherently introduces dialogue, interaction, or, conflict into a space that might not have it at all.
Right. Taking Klimt's The Kiss as an example, a duet format totally makes sense.
It aligns beautifully. The painting depicts two lovers entwined. Translating that into a dual vocal performance logically mirrors the visual subjects.
But then you apply that exact same two-voice structure to something completely solitary, like a classic solo portrait. By injecting a duet format, you are essentially populating an empty room.
You're forcing a second character into a world where only one exists. And to understand why the model defaults to this, we have to look at the training data of the AI itself.
Because it wasn't trained on art history textbooks.
No, not at all. A platform like Suno wasn't trained on the structural analysis of Renaissance oil paintings. Its foundational data is millions of hours of contemporary music.
So the machine is relying on its musical instincts, not visual logic.
Yes. In machine learning, these are called priors, the structural patterns the model encounters most frequently in its training data. And contemporary pop, R&B, and EDM tracks heavily feature multivocal structures.
Oh, like lead vocals, backing harmonies, featured artists, that kind of thing.
Precisely. Call and response choruses. When the AI is given a sparse prompt like Portrait by Jan van Eyck pop, it lacks specific lyrical instructions. To fill the void, it falls back on its strongest structural priors.
It just does what pop songs usually do.
Right. The model doesn't know it's describing a solitary figure. It only knows that a standard pop song usually features layered vocals. It imposes an audio structural bias onto a visual medium.
The algorithm is essentially paving over the nuance of the painting with the most common denominator of modern songwriting. That makes the dataset even more compelling as a forensic artifact of how these models actually think.
And if we really want to understand that internal logic, we have to look at where it breaks down.
Yeah, let's look at the anomalies. We've established the rigid rules, the genres, the dual takes, the duet defaults. Let's look at the exceptions that shatter those rules.
Because the statistical outliers often reveal the limitations, or sometimes the unexpected depths, of generative systems. In this dataset, the track durations are the clearest anomalies.
The time codes are fascinating. For hundreds of rows, the tracks sit comfortably between 3.00 and 4.0 minutes.
Which is the industry standard for a radio edit.
Right. The pop version of the Mona Lisa is 3.15. The R&B version of Starry Night is 3.14. It's incredibly stable, but then you hit these massive deviations.
The generations for JMW Turner's works present a really significant variance.
Yes. Turner's The Fighting Temeraire. The creator runs it through the EDM parameter. Version 1 of the EDM duet hits exactly 5.00 minutes, but version 2, it keeps going until 5.44.
It's nearing a 6-minute track.
Meanwhile, on the complete opposite end, Alphonse Mucha's Sarah in the R&B format is super short, just 2.17, and Wassily Kandinsky's Yellow in Jazz cuts off abruptly at 2.26.
To understand the mechanism driving this disparity, we have to examine how these models actually construct audio over time.
Because to me, it feels like that Turner EDM track is an algorithmic DJ that locked into a groove and simply refused to transition. Like the beat was too good, so it just kept building and dropping for almost 6 minutes.
That's a fun way to picture it.
But for Kandinsky, it played 2 minutes, got bored, and walked off the stage. Why such a huge discrepancy?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of autoregressive generation, we are looking at something called probability trees. When an AI generates a song, it isn't pulling a pre-written track from a database.
Right, it's making it up as it goes.
Yes, it is mathematically predicting the next microsecond of audio based on the audio it just generated, combined with the constraints of the prompt.
So it's constantly calculating the most logical next step.
Exactly, or rather, the most mathematically probable next step.
Yeah.
With the Turner EDM track at 5 minutes and 44 seconds, the neural network found a highly dense, rich area of its latent space.
It hit the jackpot.
It really did. The combination of the semantic tokens for fighting and Turner, mixed with the structural tokens for EDM, provided this vast, sprawling tree of viable chord progressions, drum fills, and vocal loops.
So it just had so much material to work with.
The system essentially found so many valid pathways that it just kept following them until it hit a hard-coded length limit in the software.
Wow, it was surfing an infinite wave of probability.
In a sense, yes. Now, conversely, with Kandinsky's Yellow in Jazz, the prompt parameter combination likely mapped to a much sparser region of the latent space.
There just weren't as many options.
Right. The AI generated a verse, maybe a chorus, but quickly exhausted the high probability pathways. The mathematical options for what should come next dropped below a certain confidence threshold.
And it just gave up.
Well, it simply terminated at 2 minutes and 26 seconds. It didn't give up creatively. It simply ran out of mathematically sound predictions.
The ghost in the machine is just a math equation running out of variables.
Exactly.
But even knowing the cold algorithmic reality of it, there is something deeply entertaining about a spreadsheet so rigorous, yielding a 6-minute club anthem about a 19th century British naval ship.
Oh, the unpredictability is what elevates this from a mere coding exercise into a genuinely fascinating observation of cross-modal translation.
It really is. So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive? We started with a massive dataset, the Master of Vision project. And we've examined it not just as a collection of quirky songs, but as a methodical, high-volume stress test of AI capabilities in late 2025.
Yeah, it's a window into the machine's mind.
Exactly. We explored how the mathematical weight of an EDM tag can completely bulldoze the solemnity of a funeral painting. We analyzed how a machine's reliance on pop music training data forces solo portraits into dramatic conversational duets.
And we saw how probability algorithms can accidentally trap an AI in a 6-minute musical loop. It serves as a historical snapshot of early cross-sensory data manipulation.
Right, highlighting both the power and the inherent biases of the underlying architecture. And that is the crucial takeaway here. We are fully entrenched in an era where data is no longer confined to its original medium.
No, everything is fluid now.
A spreadsheet isn't just numbers anymore. A painting isn't just visual. The boundaries between text, audio, and visual information are dissolving into that shared latent space we discussed earlier. You can literally prompt a machine to map the mathematical coordinates of a Renaissance masterpiece into an audio waveform.
And that translation matrix works in every direction.
Which brings me to a final thought I want you to mull over as you go about your day. We've spent this entire time unpacking how someone systematically used AI to translate classical visual art into modern audio tracks. But, like we just said, the architecture goes both ways.
It's a two-way street.
What happens when we reverse the process? What does it look like when we plug those dense audio vectors back into an image generator? I want you to try to visualize the outcome. What exactly does it look like when you ask an AI to paint the visual equivalent of your favorite childhood pop song?